Good morning, and welcome to May's discussion of the FOX43 Book Club. This month we're talking about In the Day of Trouble by Taj Magruder. But first, Braden, how was your May?
Yes. Hi. Hey, I see a bookmark still in there.
It's in the very
Were,
first
were you able to
page.
finish?
No, I am
Okay.
finished.
All
It's
right.
oh, now it's
For,
gone. See, problem solved.
for folks at home who don't know, Kaylee and I shared that book this month, and whenever you went on vacation, I saw you're on the start of part two, and I'm like, oh no.
I'm a fast reader.
So I'm glad that you're able to make it through it. May's
Yes.
been good to us. I've still been reading, still been enjoying. Definitely slowed down as I keep trying to read more nonfiction. I have my own book club that I am getting ready for on Friday. We are reading The Mysterious Case of the Appleton Angels by Janice Hallett. This is a really interesting, like mixed media, text messages, like that. Like that's
Very
kind of how
cool.
it's read in kind of thing. Um, and I've read all of Janice Hallett's books that have been released in the U.S., starting with The Appeal, and then we go on from there. So those are always a fun. She's like an auto buy author for me whenever she comes out. But otherwise, May's been good. Other than this past week, Sunday we went on for severe weather and stayed until 2 a.m.
Oh my
because
goodness.
of weather for the Coca-Cola 600, and then last night the tornado warning that was busy. So I'm looking forward to a less busy rest of the week and heading into June already on Saturday.
I know. I can't believe it. It kind of just snuck up.
I know both of us also had some May vacation, so that was nice. Where did you go?
Yes, absolutely. So I just got back from Portugal yesterday. It was
That's
absolutely
right.
amazing. Yes, I had never been before. It was great. We went to like Sintra, Lisbon, Porto, back to Lisbon. It was wonderful. One of my favorite vacations ever, by
Did you
far.
fly into Lisbon?
Yes, yep,
I
flew in and
figured.
out.
I know Portugal is one of those places that you always see that. I mean, obviously, it's been around for quite literally almost ever, but that you see whenever people are like, "Oh, some of these more like these underrated towns, these underrated beaches, and everything that people start to flock to and are becoming really popular." I've seen like the travel blogs of the last couple of years
Yes.
that Portugal is really really high up on there on the map and on the or on the darn it, what do you think? What am I trying to say here? Really on this ideas of folks to go to
Yes,
lists.
yeah,
There we go,
absolutely.
that kind of a thing.
My dad
We went
asked one
to
of the
go ahead.
people, like, "Is it always this busy?" Because there are just people everywhere. And I think it was like one of the hotel employees, and he was like, "Yes, like it's always this busy except for January." And we were like, "Wow."
Well, and they're also on the western side, western side of the continent overall, west of Spain, and so sometimes the brunt of the sea weather they can get over there too. So I'm glad that it is still just as busy.
Hmm.
I did not go on a Portuguese or European vacation. We went very very quickly to Georgia. Went down to Savannah for a couple of days, and I had never been. And it was lovely. Speaking of book club, you'll think of book club in Savannah 30 years ago or close to it. It's celebrating an anniversary, either last year or this year. A book called In the Garden of Good and Evil by John Barrett was written about a murder in Savannah. And you can visit the Mercer house where the murder was committed there. It was committed by this antique restorer that really helped, or resaler as well, who really helped kind of reinvigorate Savannah in the 60s and 70s and 80s. But you can tour the house and do all that stuff. But Savannah's so lovely. Blocks of town squares that like every 2 blocks east west, every 2 blocks north south have a park in the center of them.
It's
So
beautiful.
that's really nice. And then, of course, the Spanish Moss and everything down there too. So that was lovely. And then we went to a town called Helen, Georgia, for a big like car meetup. It was actually for my husband's work.
Very cool.
But it was for a big car meetup with Volkswagen, Audi, those kind of those vehicles or
I,
those brands. It's like a German Alpine town.
ooh,
It's
fancy.
created in like the mid to late 60s. There's only like a town of 300 people, and they turned it into a tourist Germany town. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah,
But
I have a
that's where we've been.
very cool. Yeah, I have a lot of family in Georgia, and we were in Helen 2 winters ago, I think. It was such a cool
Oh,
little
so you're well
place.
aware.
Yes, it was very neat.
It takes me a little bit to adapt to some of the fruit wine there, but
Fair.
otherwise it was okay. We enjoyed ourselves.
Well, good. I'm glad you had a good time. And kind of funny that you were in Savannah at that house, a very good parallel to In the Day of Trouble. You cannot
Mhm.
tour Susan Mummey's house, sadly, but
Not gone, not there.
not there. It's gone. can actually show you. One of the very last pictures in this book is where her house used to be.
Well, why don't you
Let's
give
pull
us a
up
little bit of
this.
an overview of overview of the plot of In the Day of Trouble?
Absolutely. So, In the Day of Trouble is the story of Susan Mummey. She was known as the Witch of Ringtown Valley. Basically, she was a practitioner of powwow, which is a very popular, or was popular, form of Pennsylvania Dutch folk magic. And essentially, the people, her neighbors, thought that she was a witch, and she was murdered for it. Sort of in the same vein, I guess, as the Salem witch trials. But this book was written by Taj Magruder. He did a lot of work digging into like her genealogy, her ancestry, that of all of the actors involved in the crime, and sort of making this into a more like human-centered story. He said that he kind of felt like if he didn't tell the story now, it was just going to get lost to the pages of history, and Susan Mummey was never going to get the proper respect that she deserved because, people back when she was murdered, they were kind of just like, oh, like that old witch. Like, of course, we don't care. That's a little bit harsh, but they were kind of like, well, she got what she deserved. And Taj was like, no, she didn't deserve that. So he wanted to tell her story. And personally, I don't know. I think that's what really stuck out to me when reading it was like just the humanity. Like my heart broke for her.
We have several Schuylkill County residents in house at Fox 43. Did you bring it up or ask Keith Schweigert
I did not.
if
I
you'd
will
heard
have
from
to
that?
ask him about it.
Yeah, just to see if those have kind of made their way around. Those stories have still made their way around, if not of Susan Mummey, but at least of the Ringtown Valley, that kind of a thing.
Hmm.
This book very much, I think it would qualify as narrative nonfiction,
Hmm.
because of all of the still quotes and stuff attributed there to kind of keep the plot propelled. That obviously we weren't there to see or hear what they said, but it was still kind of in the main vein of how that went. You get an interesting perspective as you read this book, for those who haven't, and for those who have, because it's very much divided up into not only parts, but if you think you're going to start right there in the murder, you get like a brief preview, but then it's a whole lot of backstory and getting to know the characters. So if you're looking for something that is really truly simply about the investigation, the developments of it, the court case, and this is not it. But if you're looking for something that is more developed of the backstory and examines kind of the behaviors and the why people are murdered, or this person, Susan Mummey, was murdered, as opposed to the how and the outcomes of it, and kind of more of the psychology of it, then this is what you kind of get from this too, which can be just as entertaining and just as informative too, for a true crime case such as this. And we talk all about being interested in our country's addiction to true crime, and
Hmm.
whether that is okay, whether that is harming victims, whether that is moral, that kind of a thing, despite the fact that, of course, it's not going to stop anytime soon. But whenever you kind of attribute to somebody's backstory and kind of label them as a person, it can go, in my opinion, how it can go at least several ways, or a far way, to at least try and mitigate some of those moral dilemmas, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what really like stuck with me with this book was that moral dilemma, and especially the fact that she never really did get justice in the eyes of the law. Like obviously that's the last part I read. It's the end of the book. But it just, like the her murderer, he confessed. He was like, "Yep, I did it. I did it with, full presence of mind. I planned this, all of that." And eventually he was declared criminally
After a certain
insane
amount of time.
after a certain amount of time. Yes, he did. He didn't immediately admit, but I think it was still during their first interrogation. He was eventually like, "Ah, all right, yeah, like I did it." Um, but yeah, it was really interesting to examine that question, and also I kind of had to keep reminding myself that like this he. Taj didn't actually know. Like he wasn't there in the room because all of his dialogue, all of his descriptions, they're so vivid. You really get sucked into the story. And I was just kind of like, "Oh, yeah, like we don't know exactly what they said." He did use some dialogue from like court transcripts and stuff like that. So that is all real, but I just thought it was a really good examination, I guess, of people's attitudes toward this and some of the politics of like the 1930s.
Well, and it's also a testament to the reality and tying it to crime even today. And I say that because there's a specific passage that references that his life was better in prison than out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, how part of the motivation, or the supposed motivation to confessing to the crime, or being at least declared insane for a time, was a better overall living environment for this person.
Mm-hmm.
That then, of course, we then try and transition out of to saying like, hey, like, I've been here long enough. Let's talk about the insanity plea, as opposed to the, oh, did I do this? Have I served my time? That kind of a thing. But that was true then. That is true for many people now. My father works in the corrections system, not for the state of, or not for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but for another state. And that can be just as true for recidivism, for offenders, of course, as well. And so that being a factor back in the 1930s, 40s, is just as relevant 90 years later there too. So that's a particularly interesting notion that's briefly mentioned. Page 102, I think, York is mentioned just
Yes.
briefly. And then, of course, we do have some Harrisburg and Lancaster mentions too. So that does localize it to South Central Pennsylvania. Schuylkill County is a border county to our area and our 10 area counties. So it's not that far away. But seeing all of those things kind of come through is interesting, and also getting an interesting backstory to the politics of how these people, even the investigators, got to where they were and how it kind of came together. You come into the true crime story and you may be expecting something. And like we mentioned, you get a lot of backstory and the psychology of this and the why of this, which is just as interesting. But you are at least rewarded with every angle of perspective, of all the way down to, this guy ran for governor, he didn't get it, but then he went back and he went back to be district attorney, and then appointed the guy who ended up investigating the Susan Mummey case, and there you go.
Yeah.
So at least all those breadcrumbs and dots are connected.
Yeah, I really liked how there were like little mini bios really for like everybody that was involved, especially once we got into the case itself. Like we didn't just jump in like, oh, district attorney. I'm gonna say this wrong, but one of the characters was Roy Enderline. Like they you got a little background on Roy and like how he got to his face instead of just saying like, yeah, Enderline prosecuted this case, blah blah blah. At first I was like, is this really necessary? But then the more I was reading, I was like, no, this is necessary, especially with how, we dove into the humanity of every single other character. I think it really added something to the book to know like, oh, this is how this person, either fought their way into this position or how they were viewed in the community, because that has a lot to do, I think, with the outcome of a case, like how somebody is viewed within that community.
One, resist the urge to skim,
Hmm.
because you can if you're not careful, but that stuff is just as valuable. But
Exactly.
absolutely, whenever you're talking about people's perceptions, we've all watched enough Dateline to know that people get things wrong, that
Yeah.
investigators and stuff do get things wrong at times, that there are all these things within the system that can go right, but there are things that go wrong too,
Hmm.
largely based upon people's beliefs and how they attribute their own personalities, their own belief systems into how they do their work or how they do their appointed duty. And that is just a fact of life that's hard for us to talk about and admit, but is true in my opinion. But again, once you've watched enough true crime and Dateline, you realize.
Yeah.
But it's just a fact, and so to see that play out as an avid reader, and an avid viewer, um, you can see it coming from a mile away,
Hmm.
and in terms of how this is going to go, and that's both frustrating and disheartening, but still makes for a good read to think about. I see all those hex things on the side of the barns all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, who originally came from Oklahoma to almost 10 years ago, and now I've been a Pennsylvania resident, and am a Pennsylvania resident, I'll remember the first time we were driving. I forget if it was in York County or Lancaster County where we were going, and I absolutely thought it was just a pretty design on the side of a barn. Like,
Nope.
oh,
Hex
that's neat.
sign.
I wonder why they did that and took that time. It's a barn. We want
Hmm.
to, I mean, really neat. I'm glad you decided to spend your money that way, but that's interesting because that barn, unless you take care of it, it's going to dilapidate, that kind of a thing. And then my now husband, was like, no, that's a hex.
And you're like,
That's a
"What?
that's a heck that's a heck like,
That's a what?"
what are you talking about? This isn't Massachusetts. This isn't New England. What are you talking about here? Until you realize the witchery history
Mhm.
that does make its way down here still as recently as the 1800s and early 1900s.
Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting how that like played into the senator's election. So basically,
Yeah.
what is implied, I guess, is that the reason that the murderer was declared criminally insane is because there was a senator up for re-election or governor, maybe, um, and
Governor, I think.
governor wanted to be elected to the Senate. Something like
Yes.
yes, okay. So he was in the middle of campaigning and he was like, we cannot have people thinking that here, in this Pennsylvania county, that we still believe in witches. So he made a really big push for this guy to be declared criminally insane so that he could be like, oh yeah, look, reason is back, we're fine, it's fine. But yeah, like that goes back to the whole injustice thing I think you were saying, and I think it's really interesting too how even just going back further, there was another case that Susan was involved in, that sort of like foreshadowed almost her not getting justice. One of her neighbors attacked her with a pitchfork, and even though everybody knew she was guilty, the jury agreed. The jury acquitted this guy because basically because it was the Witch of Ringtown Valley that he's up against. And Susan says to her attorney in the book, I'm not sure if this was something that was transcribed from court records or if this was Taj's imagination, but basically she says to her attorney, like, I should have known, I'm a single woman, I'm not married, I have this reputation as a witch. And that's what really broke my heart. And then it all plays out again when she's murdered. She still doesn't get justice.
And we can see that kind of stuff happen locally still today
Yep.
because of public perceptions, like you mentioned, all the time. That stuff can still happen if we are not careful and take ourselves out of those kinds of equations. That's why that kind of stuff is still relatable. Something that I found completely wild. We're kind of telling this book in reverse order after we've gotten the synopsis, but I'm about to go to the first part of it now.
Go for it.
How much did that tick you off with Grant
Oh
in the house? And
dude,
be like, what?
there were like
I
tears
real
in the corner of my eyes. I was so angry.
So for folks who may not remember, go back to the first section of the book, and you read about how Susan's father dies, and the house obviously directly should be going to the children and everything else like that. This is what, the late 1800s at this point, maybe turn of the century. I forget the timeline here. I think it's probably 1890s, and just out of the blue. I didn't know we could do this. This is my phone, but act like this is a piece of paper. I just produced a piece of paper that says, hey, no, a week before he died, he said, I get the house. And because of who these people are and how this goes, he's granted the house,
hmm That he never lived a day in his life in, that he has his
ma'am.
own perfectly functional house. He
He's
just
not
wants to
even a
take it
blood
from Susan.
relation.
Not even a blood relation. Nope. Yeah, that made me
No, he's
so
not even a blood
angry.
relation. I mean, I realize this is pre 19th Amendment here, so this is pre women's rights. So of course it had to be the man anyway because that was stupid. But uh, not even a blood relation. And then later on, that same person uh, gets custody of her brother, who struggles
Mental
with mental
disability.
limitations. We'll say that. Yes, disability. I was trying to think of that word. Yes, who then gets custody of Sam.
hmm And doesn't even want custody of Sam. Hasn't spoken to Sam a day in his life. He just wants to hurt Susan, and that is like the crux of this book and the crux of what made me so angry.
Now, I do not necessarily question, but I do have to wonder, if that was something that we found that he found that as basis in fact, or more of a feeling that Taj got. But it would certainly be hard to not guess that since the house was taken,
hmm
since all the other stuff, like previous actions and kind of guide perception here.
hmm
And those previous actions are easily seen, at least in the paper.
Yep.
And
And
after no reported incident other than just the one
just the
time where he
one.
ran off.
And then he
Sure,
just
he went
saw
all
an
the way
opportunity.
to Sure, he went all the way to Williamsport or Sealands Grove. I forget where it was.
I
Which,
think
yes, even
Williamsport.
back then was far. Where was it?
I think it was Williamsport. I think.
I think it was Williamsport too.
Yeah.
Um, but my God,
Just unnecessary pain, suffering. Like poor Susan, she never got a day of peace. Really, like she had her daughter Amy, who loved her, and like as I think, I mean, as a daughter should, she, couldn't her mom couldn't do any wrong. And she had Toddy, her adopted daughter, and they loved her. But they were really the only two that were always in Susan's corner. And that just makes me, again, feel so bad for Susan. Like, she did not deserve the treatment that she got.
you will learn what a pumpkin ball is too.
Hmm.
If you didn't know, I knew what lead shot was, but I didn't know what a pumpkin ball for a 12 gauge was. So there you go. You get a ballistics lesson too. I
Yeah.
liked whenever they specifically tested. We're gonna send this to ballistics,
Yeah.
ma'am. This is 1920, 1934. Whenever 1934, whenever that was done. You know what ballistics are?
It's a little history lesson of it in itself.
This isn't just CSI. The first time I heard from ballistics was CSI,
Yeah.
so there you go. I didn't know they didn't knew what they set things off specifically to ballistics in 1934 and weren't like, well, it looks like over here that this wound is about the size of a mortar shell, so we're gonna say it was this. I don't know.
No, that was kind of my perception too. Like some of the science and stuff that we were reading about, I was like, oh, wow. I didn't realize that that wasn't like a purely modern concept. That's cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, whenever we think of purely modern, I mean, suppose, 10 years after this murder, we are talking about the atomic bomb. So,
True.
I mean,
That's very
maybe it's
true.
not quite as folksy as we expect, but 1934 is prime of the Great Depression,
Yeah, almost 100 years
and
ago.
yeah. So I mean, I'm still picturing like I compare this to just general like health stuff as well. We think in 2024. I mean, for all the modern science that we have, I think back then I'm like, oh, I'm assuming that people in 1934 are like a tincture of mercury and something of that. Needless, or not even remembering that my great grandfather, who's still alive, was born in 1928. So I
Oh,
wouldn't,
wow.
so I never actually attribute that to him.
Yeah.
I think of that a little bit more 1800s, but I digress.
That is funny. Oh, one of the other things, speaking of like technology and stuff, that really, like spoke to me. We were talking about like the pumpkin ball and the autopsy and all that. I just when they were doing the autopsy, the one investigator was in the room, and again, I don't know if this is Taj, I don't know if this was this records, but either way, I thought it was really sweet. The investigator, who was not one of the people actively doing the autopsy, says is that like when they started to undress Susan and like actually examine her body, he turned to face the wall because he was like, she deserves dignity even in death. And I feel like that's the crux of the whole entire book. She deserved dignity, especially in death. And also her daughter didn't even give her a headstone because, again, allegedly, she knew that it would just be a target for vandalism. And that
Mhm.
just I think that really like just encompasses like the whole story, the whole attitude, I guess, towards the Susan Mummey, this woman who was really harmless. I mean, she was tough and she would stand up for what was hers, what was right, but she never really hurt anybody.
Yeah, I mean, if there was one part where I would have wanted more information, it was just the day to day or month to month taunting that perhaps that she experienced. If
Yeah.
she did, I mean, we have the court cases and everything where things were brought legally, and
Hmm.
obviously that's the easiest part or the most logical part to focus on because that's where we have the records for. But more backstory in the day to day, being like, oh, this happened in March of 1914. This happened in June of 1921. To just kind of better give us a better picture of folks thinking, yeah, there's the old witchy crazy lady lives over on this part of in Schuylkill County. However, there's still plenty of legal stuff to kind of paint that picture to still get us there in the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, interesting read. Like I said, be careful not to skim and think, okay, we're going here. Like I want to know what happens in the case. Like let's go. Like it's still less than 300 pages. Has a
It's
lot of
all
backstory.
important.
Provides a lot of psychology. Most of it's important, or all of it's important. So it was certainly an interesting, interesting read
It can
for
be fun
sure.
and interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I agree. And I do think that Taj did a really good job of, injecting that humanity into it, which I know was his sort of like goal all along. So, with just the
Mhm.
fact that we feel these things is proof that it worked. It really worked.
Another locally produced one, I think it was Sunbury Press. I don't know if that's actually based in Sunbury, but I mean, it's a local town, so there you go.
Yes, I think they're based in Mechanicsburg, maybe, but either way, they're a small
Oh,
Pennsylvania
yeah.
press.
I remember actually thinking that because it said, "Oh, Sunbury, Sunbury," and then it was a different town. That's why I thought that, but I didn't remember. It was Mechanicsburg. So there you
Mechanicsburg.
go.
Yeah, so another central Pennsylvania tie. Woohoo! But yeah, okay. So In the Day of Trouble, awesome. May read. Honestly, maybe a good beach read, just because you'll get into it. Might be good to read in the sun where the witches can't get you. Um, but
Is that where they can't get you? Do we know that for a
theoretically,
fact?
I mean, no witch has gotten me in the sun. That's all I can say. Like,
Has a witch gotten you not in the sun?
I don't want to hex you, Braden. I'm not gonna share that information in case they come after you.
I have never been to a medium or a psychic or anything like that either. So I'm inexperienced in the hex world,
Uh, I can't say
other
I'm
than
any more
Hocus Pocus.
experienced. Oh, Hocus Pocus. Oh, now I want to watch that. Um,
It
but
is not even June. Calm down.
I'm sorry. But speaking of June, our next book is going to be a tie-in for Pride Month. We're going to be reading "Ask the Passengers" by A.S. King. Um, for a little bit of backstory, it's about a girl named Astrid. She lives in a small town. She has a lot of love to give, but none of her family really wants to receive it. So she sends it to the passengers in planes that pass overhead. And this is just how she sort of like whiles away her time. She looks up the planes. She sends her love, her thoughts, her regards, because, like I said, her family doesn't want it, and she also feels like she can't give it to her crush, a girl named Dee. So this book is about her and, her journey through all of that. So I'm very excited to read it.
Do you have prior knowledge of this, or is this just all in the back flap?
This is on the back flap, but I didn't realize this when we picked the book. But my dad actually went to college with her. And he still knows her a little bit. So I know a little bit more, I guess. But yeah, that was a really crazy coincidence. I didn't realize it when I picked it, didn't realize it when I looked back and looked again, and then I was scrolling on our website a couple days ago and I was like, I recognize that book. Hold
Wild.
on a second. Yeah. So,
Oh, that's wild.
so
I
yes.
for the readers at home, I am at the mercy of Kaylee because I find out just whenever you guys do. What am I reading next month too? So
It's a great
that's a
surprise, right?
wild story. Absolutely.
Yes. So we'll be talking about that in June. I'm very excited to read it. I think, read a couple of her books just because we had them on the shelves at home, but I haven't read this one,
Mm.
so I'm excited.
Well, there you go. Nice, interesting
Yes.
backstory. Does it make you more excited to read it now that you have that knowledge,
It
like as
does.
opposed
It
to the
really
other two,
does.
and
Yes.
appreciate the others a little bit more?
Yeah. Exactly. Now I'm like, oh wait.
Good.
It's always interesting when you have that connection. It's like, oh wow.
Yeah. I have 300 more pages of this to get through, and then I'll be on that train.
I mean, hopefully, does that one go a little bit faster because it is sort of like that, like text mixed media sort of like
Oh yeah.
format? Okay, good. That's good.
Oh yeah. I just haven't been on my usual pace of I've read 42 books so far this year,
Wow.
but I was at like 38 like at the middle of April. So I've really slowed down by being bogged down by nonfiction and being busy and all that kind of stuff. My goal for the year was 50. So we're gonna get there.
Yeah,
Knock on wood.
you're on track then if you
But
look
yeah.
at it that way.
Well, yeah, I'm on track for 100 again, which was not the intention. I did 102 last year, so we'll see. Which, as you mentioned, regardless of the number I reach, will be featuring A.S. King. So there you go.
Yay! Very exciting. All right, well, Braden, I'll talk to you next month.
Sounds good. Have a good day, everybody. And as always, you can find more information about us on the website fox43.com and
Yes.
enter our Facebook page. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day, everybody.
Yes.